Welcome to episode 3 of the Pros Guide to Team CQB. In this episode, we'll be covering split stacks, priorities of work, opposing threats, and exiting a room. Now, priorities of work is basically the next step that comes in after all the assaulters have entered the room, all the assaulters have gotten to their points of domination, they have cleared their sectors, and at this point, they're ready for their secondary and tertiary checks. So it starts with the dead or the threats that they have engaged, because we want to make sure that they are actually dead at that point or are no longer a threat, and then we move on to the living. At this point, we can do a lot more with the living, but just a quick cursory check will make sure that these people are still a non-threat, and then we'll do some follow-on actions as to get them segregated and stuff like that. Next, we want to check the room itself. All those nooks and crannies underneath the bed, inside the closet, anywhere like a small child can hide inside of a room needs to get checked when we get to the room phase. And then finally, when we're done with all that, we want to mark the room. Typically, we mark the room with chem lights. Those can be a green color, or if we have some kind of orange tape, some kind of marking method is needed so that we know which rooms were cleared and which rooms were not cleared at that point. Getting into split stacks. Split stacks just simply means that you have 2 or more assaulters on each side of the threshold, whether that's an open door or a closed door. A split stack can be one assaulter on one side and another assaulter on another side, or you could have entire stacks on both sides of the door. Sometimes this is pre-planned depending on the doorway of the structure that you're about to enter. Sometimes it can just happen naturally when we go into a room and we go to our points of domination. For example, if that's a dead-end room and we have to come back out, we can split stack. Another benefit of split stack is that each assaulter, while they're waiting to get that squeeze and release, they can kind of step into that wall and get a harder look inside that threshold, inside that room, into the corner. That way they get about 90% of the room versus whatever they had prior to that. But since now they're stacked on that door, that kind of leads us into exiting a room. Upon exiting a room or before exiting a room, usually the cell leader, if there is one present, will make a call on which way to exit or what the direction of travel is. Whoever the one man is at that point will know which direction to head, and the number 2 man will pick up rear security. As the rest of the stack flow out into the direction of travel, the last man on that stack will pick up that rear security and they will flow into that hallway or basically into that next room. Now, opposing threats. Opposing threats is probably the number 1 killer of good guys in CQB. It simply means that one assaulter cannot look in 2 different directions at the same time. When we come into these structures, there's all kinds of furniture, there's partitions, there's nooks and crannies, and when an assaulter is on his route to his point of domination, sometimes he'll encounter something that will take him out of his sector of fire, and at that point, that becomes an opposing threat. So at this point, when an opposing threat happens, we need a fellow assaulter, usually a 3 or 4 man, to come in and now assist with negotiating whatever that opposing threat is, that secondary or third angle that is now open to that assaulter. Opposing threats is a very huge risk when it comes to CQB, and this is something that is not an easy concept to understand because it's not just a simple solution. Every room and every layout to every structure has some kind of opposing threat that you can't really rehearse for, but as long as you understand the concept of opposing threats and how to negotiate them, then you'll be in good shape. Now we go into what we call priorities of work. Priorities of work is basically now going into secondary, tertiary searches, the search of personnel, searching dead bodies, making sure they're still dead or not a threat, stuff like that. But there is a priority in that. So the priority goes dead, living, room, mark. Dead, check the dead, make sure that they're still dead, that they're no longer a threat. Check the living, make sure that the living are non-threats and in fact not a threat in hiding or someone that could become a threat very quickly if we take attention off of them, right? And so what that means as far as what we do with those personnel, that goes down to SOP level. We don't have to cover that. That's just whatever the unit feels like. Then we check the room. This is where we do our secondary, tertiary checks. We are checking all the nooks and crannies, the beds, the closets, anything that opens up. Think of it like this. If a little child can hide in there, we need to check it somehow. That doesn't necessarily mean you need your primary. You can transition at this point, go to your secondary to do some of these smaller checks in these tighter spaces, make it make sense to you at that point. If it is something that requires maybe 2 people, then as long as we have security on the door that we are coming from or going to or wherever, then we can start priorities of work and we start pulling people to now, give them tasks. Like, John, you're closest to the door, pull security. So go ahead and pull security for me, John. That's his world. So as long as now we have security and John's going to pull security either this way or however I orient him. Now let's say I have to check something. I can pull in Johnny and say, Johnny, we're about to check this closet door, for example. And so instead of going from just me checking it, like, under a bed, now we can do a two-man check. So Johnny can either have his pistol out or he can have his rifle out. But at this point, it's just a little bit of communication. And I just push this door, and then he just gives it a check. In this case, we have a different room, but let's just say that it's a small bathroom or a closet. But a two-man check is a viable option if you have the manpower. Sometimes you only have two people in here, so then you kind of have to really make that make sense. One person pulls security, because we need that before we do anything else, and then that other guy is doing basically everything, or he calls for support at that point. So that's priorities of work: dead, living, room, and then mark. The mark is usually a chem light. We have a bunch of chem lights on us. Whatever the SOP is, we'll mark the room. Now we mark it somewhere at the doorway so that units that are out there that haven't come into this room yet will see, oh, I see a green chem light. That room's been cleared. So they're not coming in here re-clearing, possibly drawing guns on us. Make sense? If you don't have chem lights, orange tape somewhere on the door frame, could be a Sharpie, could be spray paint, anything, whatever the SOP is that you guys can mark this room and say, yep, we've been here. We don't need to check it again, okay? Once we mark the room at this point, we are going to basically roll into exiting a room. Before we exit a room, we have to stack on that doorway, right? Since we find ourselves in all sides of the room, and let's say I'm the cell leader and I say we are exiting the room or the doorway that we just came out of, you guys can now go stack on that door. So everybody go ahead and do that. Okay, so in this case, what we have now is a split stack. A split stack, all right? A split stack gives us the pros and cons here of we have two sets of eyes looking in two different directions. So both these guys are getting a good picture of what's out there. At the same time, they can do a diminishing return. So go ahead and set yourselves up for yep, there you go. So what they're doing at this point is getting a hard look down. In this case, this is a hallway. So they're getting a hard look down that hallway. They can either come back because maybe they have an open door. For example, Damon has this open door right here, so he has to constantly check the open door, but also when he can, get that diminishing return and get that deep look down the hallway. They can do that as many times as they want to until whoever is the cell leader here now gives them a directional call as to which way to exit, and then we exit on that command. On a split stack, so we can naturally find ourselves in a split stack because, again, we came into this room, it was a dead end, and we find ourselves back on both sides of the door, so naturally we just split stack. I talked about the pro there with both people with two sets of eyes and two sets of guns looking opposite directions. The con there, however, is sometimes there's confusion on who's going to give that up to the other side. So what needs to happen is there needs to be some kind of protocol there, whether it's like a vigorous head nod, if it's low light, or if it's a small, Damon, you got this, or I'll give it up. Or if it's something as simple as muzzle up, muzzle down, signifying, hey, you got this, you're making entry, or you're exiting first. Okay, so split stacks. We can either voluntarily, execute a split stack on the door ourselves if it makes sense to that door, or again, we can naturally find ourselves on a split stack addressing a new door or the door we just came out of. So this is what a split stack kind of looks like, or what it should look like, because we have the most security to kind of this area here, but then diminishing returns give us our deep looks. So what is a diminishing return then? It's really just an opportunity or a luxury that we afford ourselves while we're waiting for that squeeze and release, or while we're waiting for that command call to go in whichever direction, is that at this point, on Damon's side, he's just going to take a big step with his left foot, pivot, and kind of lean into it like a sideways lunge, and just take a hard look down that hallway to gain more intel, to gain another snapshot. Maybe the corridor down there, maybe there's movement, maybe there's noise. Same thing with John on his end. He's going to take a big step with his right foot and just continuously kind of refine himself to get the deepest look he can. And now he's calling that stuff out to us. What do you see down there on the right, Damon?
Hallway right.
Okay, we got a hallway right. John, what do you got to your left?
Just hallway.
Just a hallway? Okay. So that's as much as information as we have right now. And at this point, they can do as many of these diminishing returns as they need to, or they want to. And again, they're just making use of their time while they're waiting for that squeeze and release. So now that we have done priorities of work in this room, we have stacked on this door. The cell leader came down and says, "What do you got? What do you got?" He makes a directional call that we are going to hold right, exit left. Hold right, exit left. Or he can say hold right, go left. Why does he say hold right? Is because we have to remember that we need to pull security in the direction we're not going. It's just a simple saying that we say. It's just protocol, really. Hold right, go left. Or in this case, if I want to go right, I say hold left, go right. Again, it's just a quick little reminder that we need to pull security to that end, right? And it's not something that insults the intelligence of assaulters, but again, it's protocol that we've instilled into our SOPs that now help assaulters, because a lot of things are happening in the CQB environment. So in this case, we're going to say hold right, go left. Okay. So what happens now is both these guys are on that split stack, and we are holding right and going left. So I know that John has the best view of that left side, correct, John? So that implies that John is going to be the number 1 man out, which means that Damon is going to be the number 2 man now, but Damon is going to pull security to the rear. John, number 1 man, always goes in the direction of travel. Number 2 man pulls rear security. Number 3 and 4 man exit. Number 4 man taps the security guy, picks him up, and then we get back into that hallway, back into a split stack. All right, so let's break that down then. All right, so get back into it, guys. Okay, as a cell leader, I'm saying hold right, go left. So now ease up on the door a little bit. So John, that's you, creep up on the door. Kind of get back into that posture where you're kind of looking out the hallway a little bit. Okay, so now what he's doing is he's kind of getting a really good and clear line of fire on that hallway, because he's about to go in a direction that we haven't been before. So of course he wants to pull security for himself. I would do the same thing. But what he can't do is go until I give him a squeeze and release. So Damon, I want you to be the number 2 man. Damon's going to come over here and give him a squeeze and release. When John gets when the number 1 man gets the squeeze and release, he is going to take a peek, he's going to pause, and then he's going to push. And we'll explain that here in a second. So a peek, he's already there. He's peeking down the hallway to make sure that there's no like death machine down there. And he's pausing to decipher that information. Whatever intel he's capturing down the hallway, he's deciphering that in his head. And now that's what that pause is. But the pause is very quick. It's just a tactical pause. And then he pushes. And what we mean by push is he is going to make a lateral push to that side of the hallway, because from his angle, he's already seen this side of the hallway. Okay, he saw the far side. But now he's going to push to that far side to now capture the near side of the hallway, so he can have a good snapshot of both sides of the hallway, since he is our security to the unknown. As he pushes across directly, go ahead and push laterally. Okay, come back. So give it a more of a lateral, because what happens is if you start moving forward, you're going to keep going, and then whoever the 3 man is, he's going to come in and have to catch up with you. So just go kind of straight across and then kind of make little baby steps until you see that number 3 man on your peripheral. Okay, then we can speed up a little bit. Yep, squeeze and release, peek, pause, push. Damon picks up rear. I'm the number 4 man, so I pick up Damon. And then I'm behind Johnny with my gun up. Damon's right here, and we go right back into a hallway posture. Okay, split stack. Okay, so once again, at this point, we've already said we're holding right, going left. So naturally, John has the best view, so he's going to take that as a 1 man. Damon is number 2 man. Damon gives him a squeeze and release. Peek, pause, push. Damon picks up rear. Good. Number 3 man goes. I'm the number 4 man. I pick up that rear security guy, and then we all travel down the hallway in a split stack with number 2, or the 2 1 men having cross coverage until we get to that next threshold. So the question was, on a split stack, do we always alternate left, right side, left side, right side? Or is it all of one side goes and all of the other side goes? The answer is that all of one side goes and then all of the other side goes. That's the answer. However, for in this case, these 2 guys to go 1 and 2, that's also okay. So there is no like hard answer there. It's just more of a method. Which method should we choose, and is that our SOP? Does the entire one side of the train go and then the other side, or do we alternate? In this case, what we were doing was we were alternating, but now we can demonstrate you guys just going. So then as you give him the squeeze and release, he does his peek, pause, push, you pick up rear, and then we're going forward. I'll pick you up. Opposing threats are, again, 2 or more angles that one assaulter cannot cover down by himself. Okay, so we have an example of that right here behind us that we'll use to demonstrate. But if we take this room for what it is, this is a corner-fed open door room, so that regardless of which side we're stacking on. Number 1 man is going to go to his greatest unknown. Let's just say he goes to the left. Number 2 man is going down this wall. As number 2 man gets down this wall, in this case, Damon, can you isolate number 2 man? So let's just say number 2 man is here. He wants to get to POD. He wants to get to his point of domination. However, he can't, and he cannot collapse the rest of this room down like he's supposed to because we have this opening here. He's not just going to walk by this opening without a gun or without security. So this becomes an opposing threat because he has a job to do here, but now this has presented itself to him as a problem. This is what we mean by opposing threats. So what it takes at this point is basically for another assaulter to come in and relieve him or kind of switch with him. So now Damon has a whole different job and I'm going to take over his job. So the number 2 man is going to get us across this open threshold and I am going to stay right on top of him to get to his POD and also collapse the rest of this room for him. So in essence, what we're doing is he is protecting me from this open threshold as we move across it, and I am protecting him from whatever else I see in this room en route to point of domination. Okay? And how that works normally is, let's just say that he's a 2 man, so I'm the 4 man coming in. I'm going to support to him anyway. So if I drop here and I see that he's paused, there's only so many reasons why the number 2 man would be paused on his way to point of domination. It's either an opposing threat or there's somebody here that he's addressing. Either way, I see what he's doing. So when I come in and I see that opening now, I understand that he's there for an opposing threat. I come in and I give him a little brush and I say, let's go. So he's going to body bunker me across and I'm going to body bunker him across. And body bunkering just means, again, that I'm going to protect him with my guns and plates to this side, and he's going to protect us with his gun and plates to this opening, to this threshold, to this opposing threat. And just like that, we've achieved it. So we got ourselves across here safely. I took over his sector. I got to POD for him, and I got to where I was supposed to, or what he was supposed to be, if he didn't have this opposing threat. Opposing threats come in all forms, all shapes, all sizes. Here we have a pretty basic opening that looks like a doorway. It could be a hole in the ground. It could be something that goes upstairs. It could be a window. It could be a cat hole. Any kind of opening that goes into another layer, another opening or a room would be an opposing threat. Or maybe it's an exterior window that also becomes an opposing threat, depending on the situation. However, exterior doorways in rooms have less priority over interior because the interior is where most of the bad guys like to hide, not the exterior. So that is opposing threats. We can make opposing threats as complex as we want it to be. I can open this door right here, and now we have one more opposing threat. Now, in this case, whoever the 1 man is or the 2 man that's going to this left side runs into the same problem. How can I come in and clear this corner and get to POD when I'm completely exposed to this opening back here, right? So now I need somebody to basically come and body bunker me. So at this point, John, if you don't mind, we'll just say I'm the number 2 man. John is number 4 man. He's supporting me anyway. So as I stop here, John's going to basically come in at this point, and I know that I need to give him room to work. So I need to take a step forward, and I got this. And John's going to continue behind me and get to POD, but I'm walking with him to get him to the other side of the threshold because, again, CQB is a game of angles. All I need is 1 degree of angle to shoot you, and that's all it takes in this case. So that's why body bunkering is so important. Even though we're this far away, and even though we had a 6-foot movement, in those 6 feet, we covered a number of degrees of angles that could have got him or myself killed, and that's why we have to body bunker. Okay? Gun, plate, plate, gun. That's what it comes down to. Protect him, he'll protect you. Get across that open threshold. Let's go. Okay, index right there. So good. I didn't see what you guys did here. I was focused here on Damon, but Damon and I negotiated this opposing threat pretty fluidly. Once he felt my shoulder brush him, I also kind of gave him a let's go. And then we started body bunkering each other. And I was focused on that door more than anything else. Obviously, it's kind of an empty corner. But that's what I'm doing. I'm basically between the door and whatever dead space I may have here. That's why I said that constant kind of going back and forth has to happen because of cases like this or like some extension of this room. It's like couch here, coffee table here, and then everything else, yep, here, clear. So now I'm focused here, getting ready to basically become the one man. When we go into priorities of work, I'm gonna shift myself over. I'll pie the rest of this, give this a quick look, and then I'll just pull security. If it's a dead end, I'll be like, it's a dead end, right? And then we just put one man here, the three of us get to work. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with you covering down an angle that you think I'm coming onto. It's just knowing when to shift fire, right? When to raise. That's it. The problem, the thing we need to understand about posing threats is not these kind of layouts, not that it's a door, not that it's a, whatever. It's that it's something that, again, has caused me to now pull security here and when I do that here, I can't do what I was supposed to here. So I can't look two ways, I can't dual wield, I don't have chameleon eyes, right? So therefore I need that next assaulter to come in and be like, I got you on your POD, you just get us past this door, cool, let's go. This really should be that simple. But opposing threats, the biggest reason why people get shot in CQB is because of these kind of opposing threats, not being able to cover down too many or more than one angle at once, not having the support there. That's it. So, and things are very amped up in CQB, adrenaline pumping, emotions, all that. So we tend to miss little things like this sometimes because we're so just involved in the moment, the players, the people, whatever. But again, opposing threats is huge. We have to understand the concept. It's just something that's taking my attention away from my current task. And that is a criteria for somebody coming in to now help you. But you have to have the self-discipline to say, I'm not going past this doorway, for example. I know I need to get to POD. I'm not going past this doorway until somebody body bunkers me. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we'll get so honed in on POD and collapsing sectors that will come in, be like this, and we'll just blow right past this opening because one, it could be dark, two, we were amped up, or three, we have a lot going on right here, right? Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Pros Guide to Team CQB. Make sure you tune into the next episode where we cover hallways and intersections. We'll get a little more detailed. We'll do everything from a dog leg or a hard 90-degree turn all the way up to a four-way intersection. And we'll talk about hallways and why they are probably the worst place to be in CQB.